Greetings, students. We're here because I've been noticing that people have different conceptions of what a thesis is, and I thought I would clarify some things to best of my ability, and also clarify what an annotated bibliography is, or what you can do with it. This is especially for art history students, but it is anyone in social sciences, the humanities, it is appropriate for. So let's begin, and I hope you can find research as fun as I do, because it is fun. It's discovery. Play from current slide. Oh, you know what? I have to share the screen for you to see anything. Okay, technically you're not savvy. Do you see it now?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. These are my family. So the process, we're going to go over for thesis statement and annotated bibliography, but also note taking. And the steps here are research and your thesis statement kind of develop together. And so does the annotated bibliography or the bibliography. They all develop together. You kind of do them all and fine tune them. And once you have your thesis, then you do more research. But this is, for the first part, it goes along with doing research. And then you finalize, you outline, you finalize, and you create, write, review, finish up your project. So we're just kind of these initial steps, but these initial steps are the incredibly important steps, because developing a thesis, note-taking, and analysis, and bibliography and work is really what creates your ideas and makes the work your own. So, what is a thesis statement? What is involved in a thesis statement? And how do you evaluate whether one is good or not? So we're going to answer that. You know, what is a thesis is an important question, because you're going to see theses again and again as you move through your collegiate and graduate careers. Here we see kind of the beginnings of automatism with Jackson Pollock's mural from 1943. So thesis statement, what is it? A short statement, usually one sentence, that summarizes the main point or claim of an essay, research paper, project, and is research developed, supported, and explained in the text, in the work, by means of examples and evidence. It's like, so you've got this idea that you've gained from doing research, and then you give evidence for it, you back it up. So example of a thesis. So we're looking at two paintings by early American Quaker painter Edward Hicks. And the thesis, the running thesis is, for this project, is that Edward Hicks was, an introduction, the 19th century painter, was a Quaker, blah, blah. The thesis is, he used his paintings of the animal kingdom to reflect his views on his humanity. In this project, I will show, that's a big key, how the animals Hicks represented changed in appearance from peaceful to ferocious to resigned, as he went from believing in the possibility for peace for humankind to fearing it could never be attained. And you kind of can even see it. I went and kind of searched down early and later of his paintings, and you can see here you've got the cheetah kind of lounging around with human babies, and here you have the cheetah being ferocious. So maybe he's he's on something. So example of a strong thesis, and here's examples of art history 200 and 201 images, or Latin American art. So example of a strong Sartre thesis. In this paper, I will prove by showing X that does this, I demonstrate that, da 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 da. These are cues. So a strong thesis statement is not. Basically, it's not too easy to already know or find out quickly on Google or Wikipedia, you know. You know, it can't be, you can't just go to your history book or survey book or basic websites and find this. And it shouldn't just be a description. I read a great paper, but very, very well researched, but I couldn't get them to say something unique about the art. You know, it was like, it's just very, very, pop art was about commercial, you know, critiquing commercial world. Okay, and so, for example, what you don't want. We will show in this paper that the nabbies were 19th century artists who were interested in decorative motifs. You just, you know, can look at a bunch of images of their work and know this. Or the Impressionists worked with the perception of light. Okay, that's practically in the very definition of what Impressionism is. Hailing from across Europe in the 1880s, symbolists created mystical works. That's like so broad, it says nothing. A good thesis statement is one, it's well researched, right? It is concise and finely tuned. It's a new idea, something new that often builds on other work that's already been done, or maybe even challenges work that's been done, and that you just develop it further. Or it could answer a question that you may have asked in your research and is somehow relevant. So it's, you know, question that you're asking, maybe a challenge, or maybe just further developing some ideas that you've seen in your research. So it's somehow, you know, relevant. So here's an example that I kind of came up with. Don't quote me on it. So you could say, by comparing textiles and artworks from X, Y, and Z, this project will demonstrate the influence of specific medieval textiles from a workshop in the low country town of Tournai on Nabby artist Maurice Dennis. So that is a very specific, strong thesis that's been researched. You know, I looked up, you know, where textiles, medieval textiles in Bruges were, and then found out about Tournai, and I just kind of put them together. So you do something like that. So, or you could say this exhibit shows the deep, instead of just one symbolist, or you could go a little deeper. This exhibition shows the deep connection of the painting, Persistence of Memory by Salvador Dali, has with the writings and the theories of Sigmund Freud. Okay, so that's kind of unique. You feel like Salvador Dali is influenced, you know, he's influenced by Sigmund Freud and by ideas of psychologists or psychology after the terrors of World War I, and you can go a little deeper and try to make that connection more solid or build on work that someone else has done. But you see, neither of these descriptions are vague things that you can easily find in the general art history books or just like Googling away. Okay. So always reflect and add. Like, why is this important to consider? Or why now to your thesis introduction? So, you know, maybe you could add to this previous thing that we were talking about Dali, the thesis. Okay, furthermore, after you say what your thesis is, furthermore, any discussion of how early psychology of Sigmund Freud affected artists like Salvador Dali in the 20th century would prove useful for other scholars who are beginning to explore the connection between recent psychological trends and art today. So it's just something like that. I mean, you have to do more research to just come up, you know. So, and so other things you do, you know, is like in your research, are you finding questions that you want answered? You know, it could, you know, is there something that you can find out that will answer? So another approach is like, you want to find out. And you could say there is nothing at the end of it, but you could say, this is something I'm creating. So it's like, so why did Monet put a special focus on the cliffs of his paintings and his sea scenes? Is there some geologic formations that he was interested in? Or what sources do you have for that claim? Is there a commonality? You could think, say, you went to the Himalayas or studied anthropology of South Asia, but then you also took a course on Romanesque pilgrimages. So maybe you thought, okay, well, maybe there's a commonality that you have found between the mnemonic devices of the arts of Romanesque France and Spain with the mnemonic devices of Himalayan art. So you can make those, you can tease those things and those ideas and bridge things together. So what is it? Research for statement, maybe other questions arise, like, is there a theme? Like, is there a debate? Look for a debate, write about that. What side you are on and why. So the internet is not your final answer. It might be a starting point, like look up newspaper articles. JSTOR is amazing, and always look at the bottom of the JSTOR articles because they have bibliographies. That's research done for you, and you can request those books. So here's an art folio. Either it might be in a rare books or an art archive, institutional libraries that you can find, museum libraries. Some great public libraries have them, catalog raisonnés. You can find collections of prints and photographs and other useful primary resources. An art piece is a primary resource. So anyway, taking a position in a debate, an example. So you can find a debate and then you can ask yourself, what position do I take? So here's something. So while most often you're talking about sand paintings, or it's called dry paintings, traditionally, while most often seen and described by outsiders and art historian Nelson Grayburn as tourist commodities, this paper will argue that designs in Navajo Indian sand paintings actually play integral parts of complex healing ceremonies that challenge the once separate relationship of viewer and the artwork that predominated since the Renaissance. So that's really heavy, but that's a challenge. He's saying, look, it's actually this, not that. So you could take a stand. Okay, so a thesis has to have an argument. What are you trying to prove? It may require several sentences of like introduction before the thesis, but you're basically claiming like what is going on, what is it you want to claim, and what's it significant? Like, so what? But keep in mind, do not fear. It doesn't have to be a world-shattering, earth-shaking discovery or opinion. It's just your twist, just your little addition. Do not, I'm adding all these theses that I think are wonderful, but you don't have to be bridging everything and making connections everywhere. You can find a simple angle, a very focused, simple angle, and develop it from there. Sometimes those are the strongest, like why is this one painting technique used? And then really go into it and find all the connections. So don't wait. Do not come up with a thesis until you've synthesized a pretty good amount of your research, because that's going to help you say something unique. And for a finely tuned idea, you want to use your own words in the thesis statement. You just avoid quoting, at least in your thesis. And crafting something original and insightful and memorable really will make a distinct impression on your reader. And you lose credibility if you, as a writer, if you only become a mouthpiece or a copyist, but you're going to gain it by grabbing them with your own thoughts. So a well-crafted thesis reflects well-crafted ideas. Your enthusiasm, your intelligence. So you might include a quote in the introduction. You don't want to be relying on them in your actual statement. Ultimately, if you know what you're talking about, it's going to show. Oh, and this is the great Morandi kind of an artist. And look at how those bottles kind of float in and out of space are so haunting. So where to begin? Where do you begin with this thesis? And you know, this is a great boxer, is now in Rome, thanks to being lost at sea. So you can only develop a good thesis by doing research and knowing what's been said and done in your topic. So you want to go over articles in JSTOR, past exhibition sites, news, art reviews, etc. And so, like I said, you research and ask questions as you go. And it's always good to look at bibliographies and follow the bibliographic lead. So this is my favorite library. You know, they have the best collection for my money, humanities as a public library. And I spend a lot of hours, but look, don't you wish they all look so beautiful? This is actually a rare, one of the rare books rooms. So take a deep dive in libraries, right? Request books that you find in bibliographies if they're not there. And sometimes, you know, one book you're looking for ends up being near a better book. So you go to the shelf, if you're allowed. At New York Public, they get the books for you, but you might look and see what's listed next to it, because you can find things even closer or put a different angle on your work. So first, cursory searches, you know, are what you do before diving deep, like your internet or this or that. Go to books on your topic, you know, a solid book, researched book, not necessarily on your thesis, but that relates somehow to your topic. You might find something on your thesis. So go to museum libraries. They're open by appointment, most, especially, and the museums that specialize in your topic or have something by your artist. They often have a whole folders on your artist, collections, not just books, but primary sources that you wouldn't expect, such as catalog resumes. Libraries index in databases. JSTOR, always use the advanced search in JSTOR. There's the art and architecture, which I don't find as useful as JSTOR. Especially in art, you can cross-reference with anthropology and sociology and history. So general news articles is great for ancient, so looking at archaeology and looting, but exhibition reviews, Holland Cotter and Christopher Knight, Holland Cotter from New York Times and Christopher Knight for LA Times, both have gotten the Pulitzer Prize. Christopher Knight just recently. And New York Times goes back to 1900 on the web, but you can find it on microfiche in libraries. So looking at reviews if you're doing contemporary, but also sometimes reviews of exhibitions that deal with something similar to what you're interested in. And museum sites have free online exhibition catalogs and books. The Met, Los Angeles County Museum of Art, Guggenheim MoMA, even the Whitney has some. And really, consult the librarian. They are there to help, and they're excellent resources. This is the librarians that I bothered. This is the room, the art and architecture room in the New York Public Library. Also go to Columbia Library, of course, but this was, you know, rich in primary sources, prints and photographs. And while I was there in another room, there was a collection of letters and such related to Percy Bysshe Shelley. And it didn't seem to relate to my work, but one day I was able to find something on an art critic, Jonathan Ruskin, that alluded to a Henry James short story that had to do with my artist. So I was lucky just to keep kind of going through the indexes and as they were revising them. So, you know, I got maybe it isn't the best thing, but I got a lot of help too from librarians, and you should too. We do have the Library of Congress. If you bring your passport or you know, ID, some two forms of ID, and have a research idea, you know, always great to have a research any idea, you know, you can get a card for it, and it's just fun to do. And we're also part of a vast network of libraries where you can order books through the librarians. Well, of course, you know, in terms of our network is going to be better. So one thing I really want to stress most is as you develop your thesis, you will also be developing your notes and your bibliography. I mean, yes, you're going to be taking notes, and it's important to write your notes in your own words and mark where you got the information that's like helpful for your footnotes. And the more you cite, the more it shows you've done your research and you know what you're talking about. So I kind of did a little mock-up. So note-taking is making it your own. So write in phrases, not sentences. That's less risky than for plagiarism. So you just put a phrase and say it's like, John Milton's poetry is known for being florid and exhausting. And you could write something different. John Milton is long. Or John Milton, some say John Milton is this. And then you put, like I have, and you put it in your own words, but you do not, one thing you do not want to do is outline, because that's tending to just copy the way another writer is thinking. You want to just put this idea and just any idea that you have. So kind of paraphrase and put in ideas. And I just kind of used to use like squares and triangles. So you put an idea, and then in a card, I use cards, you just put, well, here I have the writer being Weber Max, and then page 30. So this is kind of my like idea, da 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 da. And I'm paraphrasing, but you're not outlining, you're just kind of putting phrases down. And another thing, if you quote, so I finally got art historian TJ Clark, I wrote quote, and then their name and the page. And then what happens is you can mix these things up instead of all your things from TJ Clark in one stack and all the things from Max Weber, or you're just highlighting their books. You can have ideas that you can move around and shift around so that it's truly your own. You can see how things kind of link and relate, and it isn't in the other writer's format. It's in your format, and of course you will own it more, you know, and then you can, you know, really organize it in terms of your ideas. And then always keep kind of a basic running biography. We're going to talk about this as the annotated biography, but you just want like a bibliography like this, just kind of running. So in sum, you know, your thesis statement should be clear and specific. And as your research moves on, it will evolve and again. But don't expect it right away. It's going to be changed as you develop your ideas, and that's okay. Just start with an idea, just like a basic tentative idea, and then refine it. You know, a memorable thesis is going to make an impression, and it signals something well crafted, signals someone who has commitment, enthusiasm, and really knows what they're talking about. So don't pick something so vast that it's unwieldy. Sometimes it's good to start with something very, very small and then develop it from there. So bibliographic speaking, we're going to talk about annotated bibliography. So it's a list of work the author uses as research or consulted when creating a text or project. Listed in a proper citation format. Okay, so what's an annotated bibliography? It's basically a bibliography in which the citation is then followed by a brief, usually about 6 sentences, 150 words or so, annotation, which is a descriptive and evaluative paragraph. And the purpose of that is to inform the reader of the relevance, the accuracy, and the quality of the resources cited, and usually kind of like how helpful it was to their thesis. So it really calls for intellectual skills. You know, you have to use indexes and libraries, as well as being able to succinctly analyze what you're looking at. So a basic bibliography looks like this. You have your bibliographic citation, and this is a book about Vietnam, you know, and I think it ends up being about Agent Orange. An annotation here is under the bibliographic citation, and it talks about what the book is about, and then who it is for is written for people with prior knowledge of the subject. But then in the end, it says it's a useful starting point for writing this paper because of a valuable source for my research, which is apparently on dioxins or Agent Orange. Okay, here is another, we're back with old Hicks again. So generally, annotations should be no more than 150 words, right? 4 to 6 sentences. They should be concise, well written. Depending on your assignment or goals, annotations may include some or all main focus, intended audience of the book or the work, special features that were unique or helpful, background, author, conclusions reached by author, conclusions reached by you. But really important is how is it useful or relevant to your research, or why maybe it didn't meet your expectations. So we go over this. In Frank Holt's article, The Kingdom of Edward Hicks, so we know what this person's thesis was, right? It's about his earlier pieces is images of animals changing to more ferocious, to resigned when he sort of lost faith in what was happening in the Quaker Church. Okay, so in this book, in this article, he speaks of Edward Hicks' background and beginnings as an artist. As Holt continues, he speaks on the rift in the Quaker community that affected Hicks greatly, which led to the changes throughout the 60-plus painting series. Really stuck to it, So describing Hicks' loss of the idea of peace that he had in his early paintings, but lost conflict continued to grow. So he says he painted animals more ferociously as Quaker infighting grew. In Hicks' final stretch of paintings, however, the animals are no longer docile or vicious, but kind of appear too tired, defeated, reflecting Hicks' view on his idea of peace and the world that he lives in. Okay, and then he goes to the important kicker. This was particularly useful to my thesis because it shows that strife in the Quaker church caused Hicks to change how he painted his animals, for the difficulty in the religion occurred. His animals were peaceful, and after they were ferocious. Aha! Now I'm not saying you're going to get an article that is going to be that close to your thesis, but you might get something that's close. So, and if it's just not useful to you, you can simply say in the annotation or suggest whom it might be useful to. So you could say, the article on the Aztec sunstone, written by blah, 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 about this, while very useful for Aztec archaeologists and scholars, was not useful for my project on Edward Hicks. Okay, so there you go. process. So remember, while you're creating your bibliography, you are sharpening your thesis, taking notes. These all work together. Creating an annotated bibliography calls for the application of a variety of intellectual skills, library and index research, then succinct, clear analysis. So, you know, locate and record citations to books, documents, websites, periodicals that might be useful for your ideas. The internet, again, is not, it's the beginning, it is not the final. Then examine and review the actual items. Look at what you've ordered, look at don't just see a book and write it down and add it to your bibliography. You pick it up and look at it, you know, and choose works that give a variety of perspectives on your topic. You know, cite it, document it in appropriate style. I use MLA. There's also Chicago. There's a few styles. So write a concise annotation that summarizes the central theme, scope of the book, include something about the background, the intended audience, explain how it works, illuminates your topic, and just, if it's not useful, you say what. And primary resources are, of course, works of art. And these are what you want to always have down as your list. These are resources. So the artist's name, the title, materials, obvious things that you have in test. Place of origin, where it was made or came from, and where it's stored now. Sometimes it's private collection, sometimes a museum, sometimes it's been looted, so not available, and you can say that. Here's are just different MLA styles of writing bibliographies. And as I said before, last but not least, write your notes in your own words, right? And keep a list of all the books that are using and where your notes come from. It's useful for footnoting. And it's useful for keeping the work your work. So both research, you know, and as you build your thesis, you're also kind of working on your annotated bibliography or your bibliography, whatever is stipulated by your assignment. But always kind of keep lists of what sources you have, and you know, always make sure you label what pages you got them on your ideas. Just so if someone questions your work, you can always go back to your notes and cite them. You know, the more, you know, keep adding, you know, if it's a video, a website, or something more hefty, a journal article, a book, the more sources you have, the more research you can pull from, the more credit your project gets for thoroughness, as long as you actually looked at these things. And always put the annotated bibliography before the unannotated, you know, as you turn in your assignment. So go out there, make something new out of the things that you're finding, like this great Los Angeles artist, Nora Portafai, who like basically finds leftover pieces of like lawn furniture and creates sculptures, all sorts of things out in the California desert. But one more thing, you should always take notes in your own words. You should always put the sources for information in your notes so you can footnote correctly and keep that running list. And don't worry about the thesis, just start small. And if you expand, you expand. All right, go work and enjoy. I hope you are enjoying this process as you do your research.